Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just be another moment here. I know we're on the air, but as soon as we achieve quorum, we can begin. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Ways and Means Committee. I'm John Quincy, the chair, and Council Vice President Glidden will not be able to join us today as she's attending some city business. But I'm joined by Council Members Yang, Bender, and Johnson. So we have a quorum and we can begin. Let me go first through the items on our consent agenda. It's a pretty lengthy agenda today. The first item on the agenda, on the consent agenda, is from the Attorney's Office. This is the 2016 Ethical Practices Board Annual Report. We also have from the Communications Department the legal status of the Minneapolis Telecommunications Network that just modifies that as a nonprofit organization, and elected officials as part of the corporation. The Convention Center, we have a amendment with Messenger Construction Company for exhibit hall fronts. That's a project contract closeout. Finance and Property Services Department brings forward a approval request of the purchasing card program. Information Technology Department brings forward a contract with Clockwork for consulting services for the new website for the city. Police Department brings forward the grant from the U.S. DOJ and the city attorney for police and city attorney support, acceptance of that grant. We also have a contract amendment with SMG for law enforcement services related to area around the U.S. Bank Stadium. Regulatory Services Department brings forward a grant from the Ignite Foundation from Hearing Tenant Voices Project. This accepts a one-time $5,000 grant. We also have from the Executive Committee the approval of the collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME Council 5. And for the Attorney Unit, the Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee brings forward the 2018 license fee schedule. There are no changes or increases to that from the 2017 fee schedule. Item number 12 is a contract amendment with Everybody In for the Regional Racial Equity Project. We also have the grant acceptance for Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development and the Metropolitan Council's Tax-Based Revitalization Account, the TBRA, for the spring 2017 Brownfield Grant Round. We also have from Metropolitan Council the Livable Communities Demonstration Account, the TOD program, grant awards. From Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee, we have acceptance of a grant from Kresge Foundation for $125,000 for the Emerging Leaders in Public Health Initiative. We also have from the Transportation Public Works Committee the 10th Avenue Southeast River Bridge Design Services. It's an RFP. And the Nicollet Mall Reconstruction Project, several contract amendments. Item number 18 is an agreement with Metropolitan Council for Hiawatha Light Rail Transit Trail Lighting Project. Acceptance of a donation of a garden shed for the Loring Greenway Association, and a acceptance of the low bid with Northern Air Corporation for a parking ramp condensing unit replacement project. And that is the extent of our consent agenda, except I think we could probably add one item to that. We have it listed right now as a presentation. It's from the Human Resources Department. It's a contract with Standard Employee Life and Disability Insurance and Leave Management Services. I'm not seeing anything really significant about that item, so we're able to just put that on the consent agenda. So much of that is in future years. So there'll be work in that going forward. So we'll just take that off of the presentation if that's all right with everybody, unless there's any questions on any of those other items. Not seeing any on the consent agenda with the addition of item number 21. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So those items all go forward. Thank you very much. And we're now going to the first item on the agenda, having been joined by Councilmember Palmisano. is a public hearing, and this is for the ordinance related to unclaimed property ordinances. And before we begin the presentation from staff and the public hearing, I do want to amend the what's in front of us with the addition of item H language that should be in front of everybody. And perhaps Mr. Osborne can address that as we begin this. But I wanted to make sure that that's part of the discussion, so we have that as part of the public hearing and the actual adoption of the ordinance. So, Mr. Osborne, if you could lead us off, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bert Osborne, Assistant City Attorney, here today on this, what really is just a rewrite and a removal of some obsolete language from the city's existing unclaimed property ordinance. There were a few, again, a few obsolete items and a few terms of the existing ordinance that we felt were no longer effective or necessary, such as we're suggesting removing the prohibition against forcibly taking property from the police chief. I mean, that really never happens. The ordinance doesn't provide a civil remedy or a criminal remedy. So, and plenty of those exist if somebody does anything like that. The addition of Section H by amendment through the chair is simply restoring language that is in your existing ordinance that was inadvertently removed when we first drafted the rewrite. And it mirrors the language that's in the ordinance now almost exactly. And so really what is before you today is a reorganization of the existing ordinance, providing for all the same means to dispose of property pursuant to state statute. And it also would take the existing unclaimed property ordinance and move it out of the public works section of the code and into the finance section of the code, because the ordinance very much deals with what do we do with the proceeds of the unclaimed property.
Good.
And so with that, Mr. Chair, I would happily stand for questions.
That sounds good. Are there any questions for staff on the ordinance as presented and amended? Not seeing any, so I think I have one change to it. I know we'd like to add Councilmember Palmisano as a co-author to this. A lot of this work was underway for the last year and a half. How long, Ms. Lunning? A couple years? Whatever. We've been working on this for a while, and we had a robust conversation about this at a recent audit committee meeting, and so this was part of it. So I'll make that addition as well. Councilmember Palmisano is a co-author. Are there any other questions for staff? Comments? Not seeing any. Let's begin by opening up the public hearing on this topic. Is there anyone here to speak to this topic? Anyone? Anyone? Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing and move adoption of the ordinance as presented. Any conversation? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? That item carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And now we can go on to next item on our presentation schedule. Is from Finance and Property Services. This relates to the Consolidated Office Building Project. And it looks like Mr. Goki will be leading us off. I hope we get to introduce a number of people in the room. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman Quincy and committee members. Greg Goki, Director of Property Services. Just have a brief presentation today on the Consolidated Office Building Project. And we have two key contracts for your consideration. I'll be partnered today with Mr. Ruff, our Chief Financial Officer, in this presentation. City staff in our downtown core are currently located in a variety of city-owned and leased facilities. Approximately one half of our staff is here in City Hall, and this project would consolidate the remaining administrative staff in a new building adjacent to City Hall. The vast majority of our downtown spaces are functionally deficient and difficult for the public to conduct business with the city. As previously presented, the council continuing to invest in our current fleet of owned and leased buildings is not a comprehensive solution, and continuing to do nothing is not a real option. The current strategic real estate plan is to design and construct a new office building on the 501 4th Avenue South site. The real estate transaction for the site is moving forward as planned and previously presented by Mr. Ruff. The exchange agreement is signed, and the lease provision will begin on September 1st of this year, with closing on the property scheduled for December of this year. Our departmental leadership and consultations with council members Quincy, Goodman, and Fry, along with the mayor's chief of staff, have endorsed these statements that define this project's purpose and a greater purpose for all future public buildings in the city to follow. We have design drivers for the new building that we believe will support our intended outcomes. First and foremost is improving our service delivery to the public by being more efficient and effective in meeting their needs. The building will need to be flexible and adaptable to meet the ever-changing needs, advancements in technology, and potential new services that the city may provide. The city is a proven leader in designing and constructing and operating our buildings in an environmentally responsible manner. A new emphasis will be to create a work setting that promotes healthy lifestyles and well-being of our staff. Coming together and having departments co-located will foster natural partnerships and improve business processes that are more customer-centric, proactive, and responsive. And like City Hall, we should be proud of our public buildings, and the consolidated office building should represent the city at its best and be welcoming and inclusive to all. For the committee, I have two recommendations for award of contracts. First being the architect and engineer of record, which is the industry term for the legally responsible party for designing the new building. Listed are the responsibilities that are generally associated with this important service. Our evaluation process is very deliberate and formal, as a project of this nature should be. We sent out a nationwide request for qualifications. 13 teams representing qualified architectural and engineering firms were deemed qualified to submit proposals for this project. 9 teams submitted formal proposals, and the evaluation panel selected 4 teams for formal interviews. The panel selected 2 finalists for a second interview, which has led to the recommendation that the Minneapolis firm of Meyer, Scherer, and Rockcastle be awarded the contract for the architect and engineer of record for this project. We are joined today by Josh Stowers, principal in charge, and Alan Hillisland, project manager for MSR Design. Our second recommendation for contract award is for construction manager as an advisor. The delivery method was utilized to construct the Central Library and the Convention Center. The construction manager as an advisor is a value-added consultant, not only to the city, but the design team throughout the project. Excuse me. We received 4 formal proposals, and the evaluation team formally interviewed 3 teams, and as recommended, M.A. Mortensen of Minneapolis be awarded the contract for construction manager as an advisor for this project. We're joined today by Darren Knapp, project manager for Mortensen. With that, I'll hand the presentation off to Mr. Ruff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goki. Mr. Ruff, welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mark Ruff, the Chief Financial Officer. I think just Greg did a great job of outlining what's happened in the past, and now we're just turning to the future, because the next several months will be a very important part of the design, cost estimating, and just public interaction part of this facility. And so we will be spending the next couple of months on getting these new teams up to speed on where we've been in our program development. As you may recall, there's a uncertainty about the size of the building. We're uncertain about the amount of parking that's going to be available. And so we also have the exterior to work through. There were several options that were presented to the city during this design process. And so we'll be locking in on one exterior and then be able to come back to you as the council in late November, early December with a cost estimate and then actually a demolition contract for you to consider. And I think that would be the time when the council is formally saying, we're moving forward with this project. Obviously, these contracts are a very important part of this process, but we have more information that we need to bring back to you. And I think other options that we're going to be looking at too, that we know are very important to the council, which are the resiliency and sustainability efforts. And certainly very happy that we have Kate Knuth, our new Chief Resiliency Officer, on board so she can be a part of this process as well. There will be some contract negotiations here occurring in the very short term. We will also be seeing some RFPs coming this fall for some other city consultants specifically related to public art, making, as Greg said, a welcoming place is involving making this building reflective of the community as a whole. A commissioning agent is a group that is typically hired to make sure that the building actually functions as was designed and make sure the day we move in, the heating and air conditioning systems, the exteriors all operate as they should be. And then obviously in today's world, what kind of information technology and audiovisual we have for this building is very important as well. And then also important decisions is what kind of heating systems are we going to have, both short-term and long-term. So certainly district heating versus does this building support itself? And then we have two choices on district heating systems as well. So all that means we come back in December, as I mentioned, and then still looking on the schedule that we have been talking with council with for a long period of time, and that's starting construction in June of 2018 and completing in 2020. We do have a lease for a major lease for CPED over in the Crown Roller Mill building, which is up September of 2020, and we'd like to be able to move into this building, the new building, before that lease takes effect. Otherwise, it's a significant financial penalty for the city as well. And I do want to mention that we are starting to engage our partners both in the downtown area, and then as we move into later in the fall when the design team starts coming up with some exterior and interior options that will be going out to the community and getting feedback from the community as well. And so that will be an important part of this process in addition to working with the council. So we very much look forward to your feedback and coming back to you with more refined information over the next several months.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions, comments from folks? I hope so. Good. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really appreciate the presentation, all the work that went into this. And I want to reiterate something I've said before, which is that I would personally encourage that this is an architecturally very interesting building, that it adds to downtown Minneapolis in a significant way in that regard. I think we want this building to last for a lifetime, but also to be something that inspires and that draws people in its own right, and that we can be proud of for the people of Minneapolis, because we're left today with so many treasures around our city that we enjoy that others had invested in making interesting and unique in the past. And they're some of our most cherished buildings, and they help provide such a strong sense of place in our city. And so I hope that this adds to it and pushes that bar even further.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilmember Bender, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I also appreciated the briefing that we were able to have before. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that came out of that meeting with staff for the public. The first was Mr. Ruff highlighted a number of different factors around energy efficiency or workspace design, transportation options, and I was happy to see and be reminded that we have teams of staff that are experts in each of those areas working together to help design this building that we'll be meeting going forward. So I don't know if you want to comment anything about that. And then the second is a question, just to give a little more detail about how these, these are significant contracts, how these were chosen. And I recall that in particular, the ability of the companies to contract with women and minority-owned businesses, or our DBE program, businesses owned by women and people of color in our city, was a factor. Could you highlight, just sort of respond to that, and then if there are any other kind of big items that led to these firms being chosen?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. Great questions. I wonder if, as part of that, as you're kind of outlining those elements of the conversation, if you could just talk about the process at FSAM and other staff, and including the work of Perkins and Will, as we did communication within our departments, across departments. But please.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, great questions. I think important factor is, number one, that we as the city are going to hold the contracts for construction. And so it's a part of the contracting process that we control through our Civil Rights Department and our Procurement Department as to how we set goals for the different parts of this construction of this facility. And one of the reasons we chose M.A. Mortensen is because they've been exceptional in working with public entities, whether it be the county, the MSFA, the state of Minnesota, in demonstrating their ability to find the right places where they can not only give one-off kind of opportunities to women and minority-owned businesses, but also a more meaningful partnership over a longer period of time. And they are, as you know, been working with Thor Construction for a long period of time. Thor will not be involved directly in working with Mortensen, but they have another Minneapolis minority-owned business that they will essentially be mentoring through this process and having someone on site in all meetings. And that's meaningful to us as staff, as well as being able then to work with the architects on creating packages, bid packages that will ensure that we get a wide variety of people bidding for this project, and also creating smaller bid packages such that our target market program for those under 100,000 in value are also utilized through this process. And so I think certainly Mr. Goki is very aware of this, and one of the real value adds for Mortensen, I think that it was a difference maker in this particular project. So that's a shorter answer. The other is, I would say, we came, as Mr. Goki mentioned, we had a first interview of 4 different firms for the architects and engineers, and honestly, any of the 4 could have done the work. They're all very well qualified. We're very fortunate here in the Minneapolis area to have just an overabundance of nationally known architectural firms. And so I think MS&R, along with their partnership with Henning Larsen, was a factor in the sense that MS&R spends a fair amount of time working not just locally but nationally on libraries. And if you think about, as Councilmember Johnson mentioned, about cherished buildings, libraries, and certainly our own central library as an example, I think certainly of one of those buildings that Councilmember Johnson mentioned, a cherished building, and that public involvement and that interaction that MS&R brought along with really this international experience from Henning Larsen on designing office buildings for a variety of public entities was also something that was very attractive to the interview team. So I think we're very happy with the work, and I also just want to say that it was very difficult competition among the architectural firms. I mean, those folks who put the proposals together really should be applauded, and would say it was not just a unanimous vote, I would say, even of the committee. There were some other people who liked one of the other teams, and I think that's healthy because that means we really do have good choices as the city.
Could you elaborate a little more on some of the environmental issues, or long-term operational costs, and achieving our gold LEED certified kind of levels?
Sure. Mr. Chair, I think you'll find that philosophically it starts with how do we describe the cost of this building. We will not be talking a lot about just the construction cost, because as many people have made us aware, and certainly the city council is aware, is the vast majority of costs of the building are not the initial construction cost, it's the operating cost for the next 75 to 100 years on this building. And so just looking at the construction cost is a rather narrow way looking of what is the cost of this facility. So we're going to take that same approach in evaluating all the design components to really look at not how does this just affect our debt service, but how does this affect our operating maintenance costs, operating both what our utility bills are going to be and what our staffing is going to be over a longer period of time. And then also, I think adding in benefits, and one of the benefits being, what kind of public spaces can we have here? So we will have the need of more conference space. So those who spend time around City Hall know that we're constantly looking for conference rooms to be utilized, and certainly have a number of conference rooms that don't even have windows associated with them. And so we're looking at a conferencing center for this particular facility, and having that open to the public as much as possible for use after hours, similar to what's been happening at the state capitol, I think is a great thing to be able to say what are some of the benefits, and how can we make sure that all of those amenities, whether it be reuse of rainwater, whether it be the lowest, it's going to be a LEED gold minimum standard here for us, but also looking at the SB 2030 standards as well, the state of Minnesota's kind of LEED-like review of buildings, as well as looking at the wellness and certainly what we can do to keep our our staff and those who work in this building healthy, because that's going to reduce longer term our health insurance cost as well. So all of those are really factors on sustainability and resiliency, which are not unique to the city of Minneapolis. I think as you've given us direction as council, is we also want to be able to set the bar for other type of office buildings around the Twin Cities. So it is both what the building looks like and how it functions that hopefully will reap benefits over many decades.
Thank you very much. It really was just a tremendous body of work over the last several years to get us to this step. And it's so many steps yet to go, but it gets a little more real every day. So thank you for being a part of this team. Thank you for the work of Perkins and Will leading us through this process. All the staff that were associated with this, especially from the FSAM committee and Finance Property Services staff, have dedicated their time and energy to this project, as well as the council members who joined me on that committee. So it's really an honor to be a part of something that we know is going to be multi-generational and will serve the public, put a great face forward for the city of Minneapolis, and be a terrific retention and recruitment as we have a workforce that will be living in a healthy building and designed to function in so many ways for so many years. So thank you very much for that work. On this item, not seeing any further conversation, I'll just move adoption of these two contract actions. Is there anything else? And the third item on the additional fund for the capital project fund. On item number 22, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That item carries. Another step forward. Thank you, Mr. Goki. Item number 23 on our agenda is the 2017 second quarter financial status, cash management investment report. Lyle, welcome. Take it away.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Lyle Hodges. I'm the Deputy Controller, and I'll be presenting the financial status report as of the second quarter of 2017. Just a quick high-level overview. The financial picture of the city as a whole continues to remain healthy and stable. Overall cash position is projected to be $746.7 million at the end of 2017, which would be a decrease of about 2.1% compared to the ending balance at the end of 2016.
Should we panic about that, Lyle?
No.
No, say that louder.
No.
Everything's fine.
Mr. Chair, all of this is planned and in line with financial expectations for the city. And as such, the city will continue to meet its fund balance and net position reserve requirements in all major funds. So digging in a little bit to the general fund, which is used to account for all financial resources except those required to be accounted for in another fund. The fund balance is expected to be $90.7 million at year end, which exceeds the 17% minimum fund balance policy of $87.6 million at this point. The cash balance is projected to be $103.4 million at year end. While both the cash balance and fund balance are projected to be less than the 2016 ending balances, this is in line with expectations and budgets. Few graphs on the next slides here. This is the general fund major revenue by source, categorized by property taxes, state aids, and so forth. As you can see, property taxes is a significant funding source in the general fund. The next slide represents the numbers that back up the previous graph and also provides a breakdown of the major revenue budget categories for 2017. Again, property taxes making up more than 1/3 of the overall budget for the general fund. Moving on to expenditures, again by category or departmental grouping, so police, fire, public works, and so on. Some historical perspective on what those look like. And then again, the numbers to back up that previous graph, along with the breakdown by 2017 budget category, again by major departments.
Just a quick question on the police, fire, and public works. Those three, are they in line with what was budgeted or expectations, or are we seeing any changes in that we should highlight?
Yeah, so the report that's attached to this PowerPoint presentation does highlight that within police and fire, they're expecting some budget overages in the current year. In police, the significant contributor to that would be salaries associated with the contract settlement that was reached earlier in 2017.
Right.
There are some other factors that go into that, including some fleet expenses that were greater than expected, some overtime and planning costs associated with large planned activities. They'll be coming up here. So, but there will be some slight overages in police and fire. So moving on to the special revenue funds, these are used to account for and report the proceeds of specific revenue sources that are restricted or committed to expenditures for specific purposes. We have a list here of the significant special revenue funds, including the Convention Center, Target Center, Police Department, NCR, and Reg Services, as well as CPED and the grant funds. Total fund balance at year-end 2017 is projected to be $311.2 million, while cash is projected to be $271.5 in these funds at year-end 2017.
What's that?
Oh, that's just the projected ending balances in 2017 for those funds. Moving on to the internal service funds, these are the funds that we use to account for any and all services and goods provided internally to city funds and departments. We have the 6 internal service funds listed here. The total net position at year-end 2017 is projected to be $184.5 million, while total cash is projected to be $140.6 million. So these funds overall continue to be healthy. And finally, we have the enterprise funds. These are the business type funds that we use to account for operations that sell goods and services outside the city. So this typically includes the water or utility operations such as sanitary sewer, stormwater, water, etc. Total net position in these funds is projected to be $920.7 million, while total cash is projected to be $125.6 million. Just to note, the difference here between net position and cash is significantly greater because of the inclusion of the capital assets, infrastructure, water plants, pipes, etc., in that net position number. So that's where they stand.
Good. Thanks very much. I think what we're seeing is a lot of planned expenditures. We intentionally have done this over the past several years in terms of our right sizing of the budget. We've talked about that as we began the budget process. We didn't want to see an accumulation of cash, but on the other hand, we also wanted ongoing expenses with ongoing revenues, and so you can only use cash once, right? So this is all within our plan, and solid performance, so well done to everybody so far. Good. Any other questions or comments on this presentation? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Action item is just to receive and file on the second quarter finance status, cash management report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item carries. Thank you. Now we get to Mr. Milberg. We actually have 2 items that are kind of very closely related. One is a presentation on referral from EC, that committee, and the other is a discussion portion on it with the agreement with Xcel Energy for the purchase of renewable electricity annually. So I was wondering if we could kind of condense these, leading off with Mr. Milberg's portion of this on the presentation and seeing if we can take actions closely related rather than starting over. I have a feeling he's going to be saying yes in a second. Good.
Thank you, Chair Quincy and other committee members. I'm Brian Milberg, the Energy Manager for the City of Minneapolis. About 3 months ago, the Property Services staff received a staff direction from the HE and CE committee and this committee as well to look at our energy usage, in particular to look at the possibility of moving us towards 100% renewably sourced electricity. Last week we presented at the HECE meeting, and I'm going to show you a few slides from that presentation. The first slide basically shows you our energy usage over the last 8 years, 2008 being kind of our base year. And as you can see, it's stayed pretty steady overall for the city operations. It's increased slightly, 1.3%. The different colors on the chart represent the various areas that we use electricity in. And the largest 2, the bottom gray, is the water treatment facility, as well as distribution. The orange is the streetlights and street signals, and then the green portion is the convention center. Those three items are almost 75% of our total electricity usage. The remaining items are, of course, all the various other buildings, police stations, fire stations, maintenance nodes, all of the service centers we have. In that regard, we have done a very good job. We've reduced our energy usage by 7.5% over the last 8 years in all of our buildings, including the convention center. The two enterprise-funded, the enterprise-funded water treatment and the street lights has paid pretty much steady over those years. I was asked to estimate where will our energy usage be in 5 years, just for electricity. Now, as just in the previous presentation today, we're building quite a few buildings this year and through the year 2020. For some of the buildings, we'll actually be reducing energy usage. We are consolidating into our East Yards storage facility. We're taking down some very old, inefficient buildings. When we move towards the consolidated office structure, we'll be moving out of 2 other very old buildings as well as leased spaces. For some of these buildings, I estimate will reduce usage about 5% in the next 5 years, as well as if we implement the LED street lighting project, which has been started. We have 12,000 lights that the city owns, and we've replaced about 1,000 of those so far, and we'll be continuing to do that over the next 5 years. And Xcel Energy has committed to replacing all 18,000 of their street lights within the next 3 to 5 years. And that's where we'll see the largest decrease. If you look at the orange section of the chart, that is street light and signals. Street signals are constant. They're already LED lights. They've been that way for many years. But as the street lights are reduced, we'll see a 50% reduction in that part of the electricity usage in the city. For some of the buildings, such as office spaces, we're estimating that we'll see a basic flat energy use because we are increasing square footage slightly with the consolidated office building, but since it's a more efficient building, it'll stay about the same. We have several large efforts going on right now, one of which is we're replacing all of the fluorescent lights in every single building the city owns. It's over 22,000 lamps. We're about 1/3 of the way through that project. That project will reduce about 5% of our energy across the board. And that, along with all our continual remodeling of various police precincts and fire stations, whenever we remodel, we always put in the most efficient HVAC, change out the lighting, add more insulation, just the same kind of things you do in your home, but on a larger scale. And between all of those, we'll reduce our usage by 15%. We're at 100 million kilowatt hours a year now, and I predict we'll be about 85.5 to 86 million kilowatt hours in 2022. The question has come up, can we move towards 100% renewable for this energy? On the left-hand side of this chart, you see how our electricity is generated or how it's sourced as of today. The green section at the bottom is a most recently signed contract with Xcel Energy for their Renewable Connect program. This was a set of wind and solar assets that was brought online specifically to be offered to customers of Xcel Energy, where the customers are allowed to keep the renewable energy credits. By participating in this program, we're allowed to actually claim that wherever we use that energy, that building or that operation is powered by renewable electricity. We happen to have a very small amount from solar arrays that the city owns outright on some buildings. That's the very small orange bar. And then the gray section and the purple section are the electricity that we receive from Xcel Energy today that comes over the general grid. In other words, it's a mixture of fossil fuel sourced energy as well as renewable energy. The gray shows how much of Xcel's energy that comes over the grid is renewable. Right now it's standing at 25%, and they'll be raising that to 30% by the year 2022. Today I'm here to talk about another contract with the same Renewable Connect program. The way the program was set up initially, no customer was allowed to take more than 10% of the total output of these mix of solar and wind assets. However, not all of the electricity was subscribed to. And through the Clean Energy Partnership, we've been discussing with Excel, would it be possible for us to get more of that electricity so we could increase our percentage of renewably sourced electricity? They will have to go to the Public Utilities Commission to get the tariff changed, but they are optimistic that that will be relatively simple. And several of the Excel Energy people are here today, if you have any questions of them as well, to discuss this. This program will add a slight cost. The way the program works is you pay more for the electricity, but then your fuel charge that you get on every bill is subtracted. Right now, the cost of the Renewable Connect is about a half a cent per kilowatt hour more than the fuel cost. Of course, fuel costs are variable and could go up, they could go down. But if we take this extra 50 million kilowatt hours, is what I'm proposing, it would increase our entire utility budget by about $500,000 a year. That's on a total electricity bill of around $11 million. So it's a little less than 5% increase in our electricity cost. The mayor in her budget has proposed offsetting that $500,000 by using a portion of the increase in the franchise fee that we receive from Excel and the customers to offset some of this cost, if not all. It's not all of the franchise fee increase, it's about 20% of the increase in funds that we would receive if we do increase that fee. So as you can see on the left-hand side right now, we're at about 18% renewable that we can actually claim we're powering our facilities. With this 50 million, which is in the light blue, we're going to be close to 68%. And if we do this today and do nothing between now and 2022, with the drop in our usage, we'll be close to 80% renewable by 2022, even if we don't go out and source more renewable. However, we are looking at other options to do so. We have still some land where we could put our own solar arrays, and there may be new programs and new products available in the marketplace between now and then to increase our percent renewable.
Good. Fascinating. Thank you so much. I know the action says an additional 50 million to 65 million. Is it additional? What are we doing right now?
Yes, we're at 17.8 million in the program now. We would ask for an additional 50, so we would be at 67.8 million total.
Okay, checking. Thank you. Not seeing any questions at the moment. Actually, Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple slides back, from the aspect of decreasing, yes, that one, the streetlights in a move to LED. This was a conversation that took place a little bit at the state legislator level, but can you help to summarize what we've done in terms of the temperature of LED lights in our streetlights? There's been some concern voiced about it both impacting humans with the intensity of the light that the LED, certain kinds of LED emit, and then also just a dark skies kind of idea. Could you just help to comment on that? Because we certainly see an energy reduction in the transition to LED.
Certainly. Councilmember Palmisano and other members of the committee. There is a debate going on regarding the chromaticity, or what's called the color temperature of lights. We have the same issue with fluorescent lights. As you all know, fluorescent lights in general are bluer than an incandescent light. These are measured in a measurement known as degrees Kelvin. Standard incandescent light is about 2,700 degrees Kelvin. The fluorescent lights that currently are in most places in the City Hall are 4,100. The street lights that have been placed in most communities are an even higher temperature. They're more like 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin. There has been a great deal of debate whether this affects people's sleep cycle, because this bright light, not so much the intensity of the light, but the actual color, the bluer the light, mimics more sunlight, which then makes your body think, well, it's not time to go to sleep. So this is especially detrimental for people who work a late shift, perhaps from an 11 p.m. to a 7 a.m. shift, or even 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. At that color temperature, these people have trouble sleeping. There have been installations in St. Paul. They were installed at 5,000, and there have been some complaints. The lamps that we've installed, it's not my program. It's being run through the traffic department, so I really don't want to comment too much on their program. But it is something that's one of the reasons they didn't go out and buy 12,000 lamps. They're doing it very slowly, trying to make sure they're doing the right thing. In the city, when we decided to replace all of the fluorescent lighting, we chose a lower temperature. We're replacing them at 3,500 Kelvin, which is closer to incandescent because of those concerns. So I can't speak specifically to the traffic lights, but on the indoor lights and the outdoor lighting for parking lots and wall washing of buildings, we will be at a lower color temperature for that very purpose.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Milberg? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. I appreciate the update and the detail. And from a financial perspective, this is what we're about to do at our committee level. Sure, it's been previously done at the other committee, but now we take up the financial and the savings of that. And it looks like a great deal. So thank you for that. Ms. Barrow, I don't know if you or anybody on the Excel side would like to make a comment. It's rather unusual, but invite that. No, not necessary. But thank you for your work on this and willing to extend the Reconnect program to us for additional capacity. So thanks very much for that. So receiving and filing that one, and then taking up the next item at the same time, which is the adoption of the contract. So all those in favor of those two items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Those pass. Kelly, are we exhausted our agenda? I'm tuckered too. So we're going to call this a meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.